Hey, what's up you guys? I'm Sara Lubratt and today we are doing another literary deep dive. This is a newer series on this channel, as in I've done one of these videos previously on the Future Library of Norway, and today we are going to be talking about writers living in a bookstore in Paris. If you guys are going to enjoy this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a big thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. And now without further ado, let's get into talking about living in a bookstore. Back in 2017, I studied abroad in Paris, and one of our afternoon excursions was to the Shakespeare and Co. bookstore across the river from Notre Dame. It was a very cool area, very beautiful, and then we come across this old bookstore, which after doing a little bit of research, I found out that the building first opened in 1951 and started as a monastery and then was named after Shakespeare in 1964 on the 400th anniversary of his death by Mr. George Whitman. This bookstore is absolutely crammed to the brim with books, and it's such a cool feeling to step inside. It feels very creative. When I went, there were poets with typewriters sitting outside of the building that for like $5 they would write you a poem. And I think there was live music playing down the street. It was just like a very magical feeling in and around that bookstore. And we were there for a little bit, we shopped around, and then we got a tour of the bookstore from one of the people that worked there that told us about their Tumbleweed program, which at that point in time, the Tumbleweed program was something that you had to show up at the bookstore and see if they had any space for you. But Shakespeare and Company hosts writers, and back when I visited Paris, what they told us was that they laid out sleeping mats and everything, so you basically slept in the bookstore as a free place to stay in exchange for a couple hours of work. At that point in time, they did not have bathrooms in the building. You had to go use like publicly available restrooms down the street, and there was no kitchen, so you had to go elsewhere to get food and everything. And if you showed up seeking shelter basically, or a place to sleep, and they didn't have any, you would get turned away. Now, apparently, as I was researching this earlier today, there's a form online that you can apply to be one of the writers in residence. Now they also have studios and private bathrooms within the building instead of sleeping mats crammed throughout the space. According to an article that I found on Varsity, the requirements of being a tumbleweed are simple. Read a book a day, help with opening and closing, work a 2-hour shift each day, lend a hand with weekly events, write a 1-page autobiography for the archive, and in return you can sleep in the bookshop. Over 30,000 tumbleweeds have passed through since 1951, according to its former proprietor, George Whitman, but that was from an article from around the time that I was in Paris, and it does kind of seem like the rules have changed, which we'll get to in just a second. I also found an article on Vice from somebody who was a tumbleweed, and this is what they said. George Whitman opened the legendary bookshop now known as Shakespeare and Company in the shadow of Notre Dame in Paris in 1951, and having spent all his money on the shop, he slept on a pull-out couch among the books. He insisted on giving it up though if a writer came by and needed a place to stay. He often asked writers to sleep there even if they didn't need a place to stay. Soon he started housing several writers at a time, either published or aspiring, and these literary vagabonds came to be known as tumbleweeds. I love both the term literary vagabond and tumbleweed. In botanical terms, tumbleweeds are not dead exactly, nor are they useless detritus. A tumbleweed is a plant's way of propagating a satellite full of seeds that pops off from the root and tumbles onto a bright future. The shop estimates that somewhere between 30,000 and 40,000 people have slept here. The tumbleweeds sleep in beds that have been placed throughout the bookshop, next to the piano, above the mirror of love, and there are generally around 4 people living in the bookstore at a time. They have a portion about tumbleweeding on their website. About the Tumbleweed program, spelled the European way. Throughout his life, George Whitman, the founder of Shakespeare and Company, traveled the world as a self-proclaimed tumbleweed, blowing from place to place, sheltered by the grace of strangers he met. With this in mind, he opened Shakespeare and Company in 1951, living by the motto, "Be not inhospitable to strangers, lest they be angels in disguise." Ever since, the bookshop has opened its doors to writers who've asked for a bed. Our current Tumbleweed program proudly continues this tradition, offering a unique opportunity to stay at a bookshop in the heart of Paris and contribute to the city's rich and extensive literary culture. What does it mean to be a tumbleweed today? Successful applicants will have use of a studio with private bathroom within the bookshop building, filled with books should you be in need of literary inspiration. While you are free to fill your days in the studio as you choose, we hope the space will be conducive to many productive hours working on your writing project and reading. Typically, successful applicants will stay a minimum of 1 week and a maximum of 1 month with us. While you're here, you will not be asked to work in the bookshop, which seems like a new change, and I kind of wonder if they no longer do the beds in the common space after the pandemic. That seems like a reasonable reason to change it, but after visiting that bookstore, I don't know where the private studios would be, because again, that bookstore was stuffed stuffed to the brim. While you're here, you will not be asked to work in the bookshop, but we will ask you to help set up and support our weekly events. Before you leave, we ask all tumbleweeds to leave a one-page autobiography for our archives. So I guess that's stayed the same. This autobiography should be typed and include your address, profession, and a photo of yourself. The Tumbleweed program is designed to give writers the time, space, and privacy to develop their craft. Therefore, we ask that you do not publicize your residency on social media before, during, or after your stay, or pitch articles after your time here. That's really interesting. You know, when I sat down to film this video, I was thinking like, oh, I should follow this up next time I'm in Europe, which I don't know when that's gonna be, with like a vlog of staying at Shakespeare and Company, but apparently they don't want people to share their experiences of being there, which is like kind of cool that that's so private, but at the same time, like I would love to watch somebody's vlog of literally living in a bookstore in Paris. Saying that, I don't mean that I wouldn't do it because I couldn't share my journey, but it would be so fun to vlog something like that. Even just for myself to like look back on in the future, which I suppose I could and just like not upload it. It just seems like such a cool experience to share, which is probably why they want to keep it like hush hush. That's just like still so interesting. It's been like an hour and a half since I finished filming the video and I still can't stop thinking about that. And then they have a downloadable application and then an email that you send it to. Suitable applicants will be contacted by email to arrange a short video interview, and if successful, they will then be offered a residency period at the bookshop. I'm gonna look at what this application holds. So it goes through basically what we just read, and then it asks for your name, your date of birth, your email address, your telephone number, your nationality, your preferred dates of stay, and then it asks you to tell them about your writing and the project you'd like to work on during your time if you are accepted into the Tumbleweed program. Tell us about a particular book you love and why it's important to you, and tell us why you'd like to be a part of the Tumbleweed program. I'm still surprised that they don't let it be talked about. I think after my study abroad program ended, a couple of the people that I was studying abroad with did go and try to get like these brief residencies, but at the time where there was no application and you just showed up and asked if they had space. Maybe that's why I never heard about it again after, because they're not allowed to publicize it on social media. That's so interesting to me. I like how that keeps it really private, and I like how it kind of then seems like you have to be in the know to know that this is even a possibility. But Shakespeare and Company, like I said, is like right next to Notre Dame. It's in the heart of Paris. There are so many amazing restaurants nearby. It's right on the river. It is in such a gorgeous area. So I guess if you are interested in a writing residency program and you find yourself in Paris anytime soon, maybe you should check out the Shakespeare and Company Tumbleweed program. That's it for today's literary deep dive. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Sara Lubratt, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.